Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jami.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives.
Welcome back to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle, and we're here with a fusion hack for today. And we're just going to elaborate a bit on our prior episode, which is talking about interpreting judges' feedback, to give you some specific examples to help you better understand how to interpret.
And whether you've seen that episode or not, it's really, well, hopefully you will and watch it. It's a little bit more descriptive of the entire feedback portion of after a show. Today, we're just going to really focus on the three primary elements of feedback, which is shape, conditioning, and presentation.
Exactly.
With examples of each. Exactly.
Yes. And there's a lot of crossover. So we're going to give some examples of the types of things that we hear frequently, and then how you might interpret those, or, additional things to consider. So starting with shape, and we're going to talk specifically about the bikini category in this situation, although it does carry over into a lot of the other categories. Wellness is a little different because shape-wise, they're looking for imbalance, whereas in all other divisions, they're looking for balance. And when I say balanced, top to bottom, front to back, the same level of muscularity throughout. So we're going to...
And would it be safe to say, though, that's a great example for where there's crossover, because shape, you will be talking about shape of the glutes, you will be talking about shape of the quads, and the proportions relative to each one of those. But that also comes into the conditioning aspect, which is true in bikini as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so when we
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So when we talk about shape, exactly what you said is true. That when we're looking at a physique on stage, we don't want one body part to stand out. So if you're on stage and we actually had this happen at nationals, when one of the athletes, that she actually did win her pro card, but she walked out and her shoulders were so overpowering for her physique that all we saw was shoulders. So the feedback was to grow the lower bodies and grow the glutes so that they match the upper grow the glutes so they match the upper body. So that's a good example of a shape piece of feedback, is that, okay, the upper body's there, we're seeing a lot of that, but we're needing a little bit more of that same kind of shape in the lower body so that there's balance top to bottom. So that's a really good example of shape.
I was laughing because the athlete, we went back and told her about the shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, they didn't say anything about my shoulders. No, but they did talk about your legs. And that's related. And that's part of interpreting the feedback, is that you've got to understand it's not just one body part in a vacuum. It's that body part as it relates to other body parts. So you could actually probably add shape and symmetry with that first shape aspect, then conditioning, and then presentation.
Agreed. And then, one of the other things the examples that I really liked, and this one kind of crosses over from shape into presentation, is a lot of times I hear athletes, our judges telling athletes, you look straight up and down from the back. And so I do think, especially in bikini, this gets a little bit confusing, because there has been some, movement back and forth in this area where they don't want bikini athletes doing a full-on lat spread. And at the same time, they don't want you pinching and closing your back so that you have no shape. So you look straight up and down, top to bottom. So we do want to see some roundness to the shoulder, but we also want to see some taper to the waist. And something to think about is everyone's structure is different. So if somebody's already got a very wide clavicle and they're already broad through the upper body, they're going to be able to stand a little bit more relaxed, because they're naturally going to have that hourglass shape that the judges are looking for. Whereas if somebody has a little bit narrower build, structure to the actual bone structure is narrower, then they might need to open up a little bit more to create the illusion that they've got more of the hourglass figure.
Right.
Same applies from the front. So if the judges said that to an athlete, we need more shape from the back, then that question would be, do I need more development? Or is it a matter of I wasn't posing to best display the shape that I currently have? And it could be a combination of both of those things.
And then there's this other aspect, which is we have some athletes who have the shape but simply can't open their back for whatever reason, or won't open, or did not open their back on that day on the show. So it's an interesting conundrum, riddle to be in terms of figuring out where that falls within the feedback that the judges are giving.
Right. And I think a lot of times it is a combination.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always go, okay, well, long term, I could use a little bit more size, in my upper body. I can keep training it and growing. So I'm creating more of that hourglass shape. But short term, I'm going to work on the posing so that I could display it a little bit better.
Right.
So it's not a all or none sort of thing. Like we can work on all of these things simultaneously. I think where the crossover comes in terms of conditioning, it could be some crossover conditioning to posing because, if let's say somebody is a little bit on the too lean side and they've got a little bit of striations in their glutes, if they're swaying and moving their hips around a lot, that might show it a little bit more than if they were a little more still. I think that a lot of times people are wanting to embellish and create these really fancy routines that might actually more display some of the weaknesses that if they would have kept it simpler, maybe that wouldn't have displayed those weaknesses. That's like the walk to the back. When the judges do the walk to the back, that's where they can catch a lot of these things that they might not see if you're just holding a pose static. So that's something to think about too. If you're a little bit on the conditioned side, being careful, with how you're moving and how much you're letting the judges see like those fibers moving because, there's less body fat. Same thing with vascularity, being careful with that as well. But on the other side of things, so if conditioning, if you needed to be a little bit leaner, then, you might need to pose a little bit harder, but also being careful with that as well. I know the one of the examples we give a lot in terms of conditioning also is that always I think it's probably the number one thing is you need a little bit more fullness in the glutes, and people come back and they're too soft, or they'll say you need to be a little bit tighter in the glutes, and then people come back and they're too lean, whereas it was really more of a development issue and less of a conditioning issue. So having clarity around that is really important.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm glad you brought that up because I do think that's one of the primary areas of confusion is when the judges say full, when the judges say lean, when the judges say tight, these are not, again, terms that exist in a vacuum because they exist relative to other body parts. So, hey, fuller in the glutes could mean that your legs were different from a proportion point of view. That was affecting how the glutes were viewed. It could be a posing thing. It could be a lot of things. So, and it could also, and the other factor is that who else is on stage with you, and that's making you look a certain way. So, you've got to really factor in the context in the broader picture in order to understand your feedback.
Right. And I'm going to throw one more thing in on that fuller thing. A lot of times it's that people did not eat enough or drink enough, or that they've cut out sodium. So if you're one of those people that you're like, gosh, I looked a lot better prior to show day or after show day once I ate, then that's one of those things that you want to tune into is, maybe I lost my fullness, not due to a lack of muscle or not due to a posing issue, but it was a peaking issue, which, is a whole nother subject that we'll talk about in another episode. But I did want to bring that up. So there are a lot of variables, but I do think it's really important to start to kind of like look at each of these elements that we talked about, the shape, the conditioning, and then the presentation, and figure out like, where does this lie in terms of the, what the feedback is when I'm filtering it through and interpreting it. What does that mean for me with my particular physique? How am I going to work on my physique, whether it be from a presentation standpoint or putting more and more muscle, maybe changing my peaking protocol, or coming in a bit more, a leaner or not as lean to make sure that I'm really nailing that criteria for my next show.
And the little diagram I just wrote on my iPad was just thinking about this as a Venn diagram where the circles are intersecting of shape, conditioning, and I'm going to add symmetry, shape, symmetry, conditioning, and presentation. And because those don't exist alone, they exist relative to the other two, if you're talking about one. So making sure that you are looking for that center point of where those things collide or where they intersect so that you're getting the context, but you're also figuring out, which is the whole goal of bodybuilding as well, is not how do I look like Jami? It's how do I look like Greg, but being the best expression of Greg. And so it's really looking for that intersection of shape, symmetry, conditioning, and presentation. And then how do I get the most out of my physique? How do I present my physique best? And then how do I affect those proportions? Because look, if my shoulders aren't where they need to be, but my back is great, well, maybe it's my back that's overshadowing my shoulders. And so I need to recognize that proportion between the two. Glutes and legs are a notorious area for, well, the glutes may look smaller because your legs are too big, or the glutes may look bigger because the legs are too small. So it's how you present in totality. And I think you said this in the full episode, is that when you're on stage, they're not judging one body part. They're judging your entire physique. And so when you get feedback about one body part, recognize that that one body part isn't just something that exists in a vacuum, that you're going to have to think about how that one body part is affected by the other body parts, is affected by your presentation, how you pose it, all that whole viewpoint.
Yeah. No, I think that was a great way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I think we're done
Yes.
with this fusion hack. So say it.
Be good to yourself.
Be good to each other and be safe. Wife, thank you so much. I love you very much. Like, comment, subscribe, leave your comments. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBodyFusion.